Let's talk about how we establish the timeline of the Great Tribulation. Matthew 24:21, which is properly translated affliction, not tribulation. Okay, it's the afflicted way. Matthew 7:14, not the tribulated way. But I digress. That's beside the point. The great affliction found only in Matthew 24:21 has its timeline according to the parabolic watch time between midnight and cock-a-doodle-doo. This is where we have to seek the wisdom in the watch time parables here, which are found primarily in Mark 13:35 and Luke 12:38. And the half is midnight, when 5 virgins enter the wedding and then the foolish are locked out into the third watch time. The door is shut. So the timeline of the great affliction, which probably comes in towards the middle and the end of the third watch time, is established when we back up from Matthew 24:21 to verse 15 here, where Jesus mentions Daniel. This is the only mention of the prophet Daniel in the whole New Testament. And what Jesus is quoting here is Daniel 12:11. Okay, so we see the mention of the abomination of the desolation, where if we just click over to Daniel 12:11, this is right at the end of the whole epistle. We see here, and when the continual offering is turned aside, and the detestable, yea, that becoming desolate is given, there will be 1290 days. Now here's the clue that points us back to the watch times. Blissful, the one dragging along, and he who reaches to 1335 days. So dragging along, of course, is a key word here. Dragging along would be the tail end, where sadly, the King James has translated the Hebrew word waiteth, which does not express the dragging along part of the word. The concept of the Hebrew word ha here concerns tarrying. Well, for example, here in the parable of the talents, when we get to the last one who did nothing, he's evil and tarrying slave. Okay, so this would be the concept of dragging along. Right here, dragging along. They didn't come in here, they didn't come in here, they're coming in at the very end. Blissful dragging along. Third watch time conclusion, which was the sign given Peter. So this is how we establish the timeline of the so-called Great Tribulation, the Great Affliction. It's the third watch time. And this is important because many of the parables of Jesus are speaking to a third watch time audience, namely the so-called elect or outchosen of Matthew 24:22, who will go through the great affliction. And the outchosen here are mentioned 3 times in this chapter. Verse 22, verse 24, and verse 31. Where notice it says here, they will be led on together, outchosen, out of the 4 winds, from the tips of the heavens till to their tips. So the word tips here indicates the utmost part, the dragging along, the tail end. The second half of Daniel's 70th week, remember 1290 with an additional days to 1335, where the second watch time is the first half of Daniel's 70th week. And the parallel to Matthew 24 concerning the outchosen is Mark 13, right here. So we have the outchosen are mentioned 3 times in Matthew 24 and 3 times in Mark 13. with the last mention in Mark, it's the same context of Matthew, where Mark uniquely accounts for the parable of the watch times down here, verses 34 and 35, which concerns doors, coming in through doors, the door of the wedding, namely, which midnight door closes on the foolish virgins. When the door was shut, Matthew 25:10, the timeline given is the middle of the night. So again, the foolish virgins are locked out. They're the outchosen mentioned in Matthew 24 and Mark 13. Where let me add that those who are outchosen here, Ephesians 1:4, are not the same audience. Here, we are outchosen to uphead the all, pre-midnight. So we have to correctly cut the word of truth concerning the outchosen or the elect. If you're reading Matthew chapter 24 or Mark 13 and you see outchosen or elect, and you're putting yourself among them, you're putting yourself among foolish virgins locked out of the wedding.